Okay, guys, I'm back. I'm in the garage today, and this is going to be a garage review. People have asked me about my tank setups, and so I thought I would start a quick one with the medium tank line. And the American line is the line that I started with first, so I thought I could start with that because I do have some rather skilled crews in my American mediums. And so, as a lot of people, they'll say you should do your first skill and then do your second skill and then convert your second skill to brothers in arms. And so, but that's, I don't feel that's realistic. Like, look, I have 91 gold right now, right? Most people do not have the money to sink into the game to do that kind of thing. So I'm going to kind of start at tier 5 only because the M3 Lee is terrible. I hated it, and so I got rid of it. But at tier 5, really the things you're looking for, you want Sixth Sense. But normally, like if I start a new crew or a new line, I don't get Sixth Sense until I hit tier 6. And so I will buy a 75% crew and put them in here. And then I, of course, go up here and I use some of my crew XP bonuses to try and get crew XP up. And by doing that, I can usually get pretty far along the line to my first skill. And usually I pick camo for my first skill, or I used to pick the view range skills, but nowadays I pick camo on most of my guys, or if I think I'm going to be a close in fighter, I'll pick repairs. So it kind of depends on the tank. You know, if you're in a Russian tank, generally I would pick repairs. If you're an American tank or a British tank, then I would pick camo because you need to have distance, and especially like the German line, most of them I would pick camo. But you've got to keep that in mind as you're playing the game, because I do just run a standard repair kit. I run small first aid, and I run automatic fire extinguisher all the time because they don't get used hardly ever. And you sink 20K into enough tanks for your tanks. And if it does get used once in a while, so what? I guess I'm kind of a gold noob in that way, but a lot of people will wait till tier 6 or tier 7 to do that. But I generally, once I hit tier 5, I do automatic fire extinguishers because I've had so many fires go on with tanks that don't have automatic fire extinguishers, and I'm so used to having the automatic that I end up losing a lot of HP before I actually hit the button. And two, my number 6 is my number for this, and so in most cases it's harder for me to reach. So because I use home row when I play the game, I'm different than most people, but I use home row. So at any rate, so what I use for equipment then generally is almost every medium tank is the same. I'll do medium caliber gun rammer, I do enhanced gun laying drive, and optics. And when I get a really bad crew, I'll start out with binos instead. And if you're a free to play player and you don't want to spend any gold, well, now you can get the demounting as part of some of your bonuses, and so that should help you. But you can always do camo net and a pair of binoculars, and you can move those from tank to tank to tank as you finish up a grind. So, for instance, these guys, I would run these guys until I'm done grinding this tank, and then when I moved them into the next tank, I would pay the however many 100,000 credits or whatever it is to give a 75% crew, which will probably get them up to 85 or 90, and then at tier 6, I will keep pardon me, I will keep them in that tank and grind that tank until I have my first skill. And so, again, it does make it easier because you can go in here and you can use some of your bonuses. You should have some of these if you played at all, because they give them out like candy. I have like 1,000 of them. I don't even know. Yeah, 1,040. So you should be able to do that and grind your crew up to the next level. Now, this is a derp tank, so I may just use enhanced gun laying drive on this just because there are tanks, the T20. Once you get up to tier 7, I use a vertical stabilizer on almost every tank, and then I also use a gun rammer and optics on most tanks. Russians seem to have less view range, so in some cases either I will swap out my fire extinguisher for a for food, or sometimes I will just run, instead of running a vertical stabilizer, sometimes I'll run a binos as well as optics. But usually if I try and play around the fact that they don't have as good a view range and try and get someone else to spot for me, basically rely on my light tanks more. But I am a very aggressive player, so the fact that I really enjoy view range, because I feel like I can get up there, get into the mix, and then if somebody shoots at me, I'm gonna spot them, from cover. So unless they know bush mechanics well, I'm going to spot them. So one thing you'll notice, I guess, with almost every crew, let's look at the commander here. I generally go 6 cents, and then nowadays I don't go recon because that only gains you 3%. I usually don't go jack of all trades either. This is when I kind of first started playing, but I would go with probably camo on my next skill, and then my third skill I might go with I may go with brothers in arms, but usually I kind of wait till my fourth skill, because there's so many more useful skills on the other guys that you can use, right? So if like for instance, this guy here, I have snapshot, I have concealment, and I have repairs almost done. So I'm on my third skill here. Smooth ride is also very good for the driver. It helps a lot with aiming. It keeps your reticle smaller, basically. And that's kind of how I run almost everybody, is smooth ride, snapshot. That's almost every medium. My driver, I ended up with off-road driving, which I wouldn't normally take, but I would take smooth ride and I would take concealment, and perhaps there's some other skills that I could go with. Of course, repairs is a good skill. Clutch braking is actually a very good skill, especially in heavies, but in like fatter mediums, which the Americans are, that's all actually a very good skill to have. So let's see, who do we have next? Oh, that's the guy I just did. Sorry, folks. Okay, radio operator, I almost always take situational awareness first, and I've kind of changed that to where I take repairs and camo first, but this increases your view range by 6%, so it's actually a very, very good skill to have in almost any situation. And because Americans have really good view range to begin with, you're extending your view range even more and giving yourself even a better advantage. So that's why I've historically chosen that, especially in American tanks. But I would not, in other tanks, I probably would just live with the less view range and maybe go for more camo or more repairs, that kind of thing. So the loaders, I don't know. I always go with repairs and camo, and sometimes I'll go with intuition if it's a long reload, like in a tier 8, tier 9, tier 10, if you've got a long reload. But if you're in a Russian tank that has a 6-second or 7-second reload, or even an American tank, 6 or 7-second reload, I wouldn't do it. The reason that I did it on this tank is because it's got a derp gun and it's got like an 8-second reload. So intuition what that does is it allows you to change shells, and it changes immediately in some cases. And if you have 2 loaders, it stacks. So it can really be helpful. You can get up to a 34% chance that your shell is going to load in immediately when you change shells. So there's not a whole lot of skills that I find all that exciting. You know, Adrenaline Rush I hardly ever use. Safe Stowage, if I'm getting ammo racked a lot, I will use it. The FCM50T is awful for getting ammo racked, and Safe Stowage actually helped quite a bit. And I don't know if that stacks, but I'm not sure if there's two loaders in the FCM. You could fit a bus full of people in there. But anyway, so that's kind of my medium tank setup for those of you that don't know. And these tanks are kind of inconsistent because these are all derp guns. I did 3-mark this tank, the E2, with the 76 millimeter. And this tank does not have very good view range. It just is a part of the way the tank works, because you should be using the not the top turret, because it's got 152 armor on all sides. Everyone says to do it that way, but I did not go with that. But with that, you only have 330 meters view range. I found it more helpful to have the 370, because in bottom tier games, I could put up my binos and kind of hide behind a bush. And that's how I 3-marked it, is in bottom tier games, I did a lot of spotting. So that's just kind of information for you, for those of you trying to 2 and 3-mark tanks. So we get up to some of these other guys are pretty skilled. You know, this guy has Sixth Sense, Eagle Eye, which I would not ever suggest. Recon, which is a view range skill that gains 3% view range. And Jack of all trades is actually nice when your gunner dies or whatever. Then it only takes away 50% of what his skill is. So your reticle isn't the whole screen, basically. And then on everybody else, I've got repairs, snapshot, designated target, which I don't even know what that is. But, it adds a chance that you're going to do critical damage. And concealment. Probably ought to have more concealment on these guys, but smooth ride, clutch braking, off-road driving, and repairs, because this thing is fairly mobile, but it's not real fast, so I wanted to kind of upgrade that mobility. So these are a little bit tank dependent. So situational awareness gains you 6% on your view range, and then call for vengeance. If you die, or if the radio operator dies, it adds 2 seconds to his availability to see targets. I think that's it. Concealment and repairs. And then, of course, repairs, firefighting, concealment, and intuition. Just because there's not a whole lot of skills that I really need for my loader. Hardly ever. So one of the things I should mention is there are skills and there are perks. And skills, some skills, all skills will upgrade as you go. So if you have 40% camo, that's going to be 40%. Like this guy has 96% camo skill, and he's going to have 96% camo skill. Unlike the perks, like Sixth Sense, where it doesn't work until you get it to 100%. So I really try not to pick things that are perks, because skills are so much more important. And that's part of the reason that I don't do Brothers in Arms, because until you get all of your guys up to 100%, Brothers in Arms does not take effect. So that's just a personal thing, and a lot of people will tell you I'm wrong. They're welcome to tell me I'm wrong. That's okay. I feel like I got the skills to back it up, and if I'm getting 2.5% better reload time and stuff, or less reload, I'm going to work around that. I'm not too worried about it, quite honestly. What's more important is positioning. So I hope that helps whoever is looking into this. I'll try and do one for heavy tanks. I mean, I can go over heavy tanks real quick for you guys, just quick and dirty. I'm not a big heavy tank player, but the first thing you need, of course, is Sixth Sense. But the next thing that you need on almost everybody else, I would suggest you go repairs. Because if you get tracked out in the open, you're in trouble, right? Camo is not nearly as important, but skills like clutch braking, snapshot's a good skill because it reduces your aiming reticle during movement of the turret. And smooth ride is also important because when you're on the move, it reduces your reticle bloom. And so that both of those are really important on heavy tanks, I feel. And then repairs is probably the next thing that you want to go to. Safe stowage is actually can be important on heavy tanks if you're getting ammo racked regularly, but that's a perk, so you got to wait for it to take effect. And then firefighting can also be important if you want to get rid of your fire extinguisher. American tanks, if you get hit in the rear, you're likely to get lit on fire. But if you're playing frontally like you should, they almost never light on fire. Whereas like German tanks, your engine goes out, you get caught on fire frontally all the time. And I think Russian tanks can too, but I usually really try and stay hull down in my Russian tanks because they're so low slung and like that. So at any rate, I hope that helps you guys. And then of course I use vertical stabilizers. Always use a gun rammer if you can afford it. And often I'll use vents. Sometimes if it's a tank I don't like or it's not a frontline tank, I will put a set of binoculars on instead because you can kind of snipe from the back that way and catch people off guard. The trouble is that your camo is not very good in general. And so unless you can outspot stuff, but you need to be in a bush basically to negate any lack of camo that you have. So I hope that helps you guys. Let me know if you'd like more info on how I set my tanks up and how I play my tanks. I'd be happy to give you guys more info, and we will catch you on the next one. Tonester out.